Is JJ Redick coaching the team he wants or the team he has? That's next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers first listen of every day. I'm Brian Kamenetzky with Andy Kamenetzky, co-hosts of Locked On Lakers, what we consider the number one show on the number one sports podcast network on this or any other planet. Thanks so much for tuning in, no matter how you get the podcast, whether it's Apple, iTunes, Spotify, subscribe there, or perhaps Locked On Lakers on YouTube. We certainly appreciate you tuning in. Andy, it was an ugly game, an ugly affair on Wednesday as the Lakers got thumped by San Antonio. They are eliminated from the NBA Cup, but more importantly, it was a game that laid bare, not necessarily stuff we didn't know about the team, but was like, oh, this is how it can be problematic. The lack of speed, or some of the positional issues, the lack of bench punch, like all of that was out there for people to see in ways that were kind of hard to watch at times.
Well, it also too, it didn't just lay bare the weaknesses that we've talked about with this team, just that. It also reinforced the idea that when the Lakers lose, and they are 17-7, so they are winning much more than they are losing, but when they lose, they get the bleep kicked out of them. Like,
they lose. Like, we're gonna lean into it.
And what I think this speaks to is not the idea that they can't beat good teams, because they have beaten good teams before. I mean, they have had losses at times against teams that, frankly, they are better than, like, say, a half-strength Atlanta Hawks team that they should have beaten. Instead, they lost by 20. It's just an overall tendency of, when you want to say either the bottom falls out because the weaknesses really get picked at, or some combination of both, they fall hard. And what it makes it look like is, until the team's weaknesses are better addressed in some way, whether internally, whether through trade schematics, better overall focus for 48 minutes, however you want to put this, when the Lakers are vulnerable, they're very, very vulnerable.
I think that's the big thing. I think that's the issue, because it's that question of not being able to easily address it. There's not sometimes you look at a team, they're like, okay, we're not shooting the ball well. We didn't make our free throws. We didn't but you can expect those things to level out over time. You can look at the roster and say, we could tweak this, we could do this. This guy is underperforming. You expect more here. You look at the Lakers roster, like the bench scoring issue. Marcus Smart certainly, did his part on Wednesday night, made 8 3-pointers and all that stuff. A, he's somebody who could end up in the starting lineup eventually, but also B, that's not something you count on. Marcus Smart shooting like he did on Wednesday. And then you look around the rest of
one can make an argument that it's actually much scarier when Marcus Smart takes 8 threes.
Well, we're gonna talk about that, because a lot of this conversation we're gonna get into today is sort of related. It's big picture stuff that is funneled through the prism of Jarred Vanderbilt, as so many things seem to be.
And Rui. I think a lot of this is a prism of Vando and Rui, two very polar opposite players.
If you could somehow combine them into one person, they'd be like a $50 million player.
But it also, though, really quick, like in continuing the conversation, I think it also speaks to some differences between the issues that are inherent to this roster that maybe cannot be fixed, like truly fixed internally as is. You can try to make them better, but there are inherent skill sets missing on this roster, or attributes missing on this roster, that really cannot be fixed without a trade. Or there are also questions of, could these things be made better if you went about handling the roster and some of the lineups differently? I think both things are actually a legitimate question for the Lakers.
So, and those things you're talking about, bench scoring, is going to be problematic with this roster. Guys like Jake LaRavia can pop up sometimes, but they're not, Lou Williams in his heyday, Jordan Clarkson, the guys who come off the bench for the Spurs, Champagny can score and Keldon Johnson can score and Dylan Harper can score. And like, there's just a lot of that on that bench. And the Lakers don't have that. They don't have the type of speed that other teams do. That athleticism gap is still there. And that's not something that you can just wave a wand and fix. It's interesting to me that, LeBron talked about this. Austin talked about this after the game on Wednesday. They need to be like defensively 5 on a string. It can get cliche and people can throw that expression around and all that. But in the case of the Lakers, it's true. Like, they need to be a team that functions very efficiently as a group, always with high effort, but where essentially when you talk about 5 guys on a string, because you don't have a wealth of great individual defenders, that you're essentially talking about, we need to be better than the sum of our parts. And that is not an easy thing to do, particularly against really good teams. Teams with a lot of athleticism, teams that can pick on your weaknesses. The idea of making our whole better than the individual pieces, it's something that you can do, but it's also very difficult. And there's probably a ceiling as to how good you can make that.
Well, there's probably a ceiling, but I think there's also the approach, and we will get into this. And you mentioned the idea at the top of the show, is JJ coaching the roster that he has or the roster that he wants? I do think that JJ's approach to this makes it in some ways more difficult than it needs to be, or at least seems more difficult than needs to be to me. Like, am I saying that if JJ did everything correctly, the Lakers would be playing at the level of the Thunder and they would seemingly have no weaknesses? No. Like, a Wemby-less Spurs, while a worse team overall, turns the Spurs into a team that is in a lot of ways an actually worse matchup for the Lakers, because they really have at that point no choice other than to lean into the guards and wings that they have, who are fast and are athletic and can push advantage, push pace, get to the line. And, the Lakers did not react well to this, both in terms of their overall deficiencies, like the inherent weaknesses that they have, but also they were legitimately fouling the crap out of the Spurs in this game all the time. They were
and their offense wasn't efficiently. Yeah, none of it was good.
But you also, though, look at, for example, JJ after the loss in his post-game media talked about how right now, quote, containing the ball is probably the most difficult thing for our team right now. Mm-hmm. And then he mentioned that the things that help you win at the margins, we're not very good at that. We can't crash the boards. We don't force a lot of turnovers. Like, these are all things that are calling cards of Jarred Vanderbilt. And to be clear, Vando is a flawed player. He is not the panacea for this team. I don't think if Vando was in the rotation, most to all of the problems would be solved in and of itself. I think there can be a ceiling on how many minutes you can play him. But when you take a look at the recurrent weaknesses and issues of this team, and JJ being, I think it feels like he is actively avoiding playing Jarred Vanderbilt. Like, Jarred Vanderbilt is his very loud last option that he does not want to go to. He has given Dalton Connect minutes ahead of Vando. He has given Adu Thero minutes ahead of Jarred Vanderbilt. When Maxi Kleber has been healthy, he has given those minutes to Maxi. He has played Gabe extended minutes when Gabe has been healthy. It is very clear he does not want to play Jarred Vanderbilt, even though Vando is somebody that very specifically addresses some of these issues. You could argue he is in the league in a lot of ways to address these type of issues. And I think that raises the question of coaching the roster you want versus the one that you have. I think also this is a question of how Rui is utilized both as a starter versus coming off the bench, and the question of why won't Marcus Smart start? If maybe that'll happen soon if he stays on the court, but JJ hasn't seemed inclined to do that. He's seemed inclined to keep the offense first starting lineup, which I understand the potential pluses, but there are glaring minuses, and it feels like there are glaring ways to address several needs of this team that JJ just simply doesn't seem interested in going to.
Want to let people know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. Both Rui and I feel differently about the Rui question. And, obviously both of us have said since training camp, we would start Smart if possible. Smart hasn't always made that an option. And I think there are some other things going on with why Rui is still in the starting lineup, even beyond Smart's availability. But I feel very differently about the Rui question versus the Vando questions, but we should unpack both of them next.
Locked on Lakers is brought to you by ZocDoc, guys. It's almost 2026. Those days of waiting for something to become a full-blown emergency before you actually see a doctor, done. There's no more walking it off for 6 months, pretending the weird shoulder stiffness is just, I slept wrong. It's time to take your health seriously. ZocDoc makes that easier than ever. Like, staying healthy is more than about hitting the gym or eating right, which is somebody who actually eats pretty clean and tries to work out. That can be frustrating because there are times when I want to see a doctor and it is really difficult to get an appointment, unless, of course, you're using ZocDoc, because it makes scheduling easier. You can search for in-network doctors. You can book right in the app. Real appointment times get listed, including same-day visits. There's no more waiting weeks to be seen. ZocDoc lets you compare providers using real patient reviews, not ads. So stop putting off your doctor's appointments. Get the care that you need. Go to ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNBA to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNBA, ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNBA.
I do think with Rui, Andy, there is some element here of the sort of the small p politics of, you have a guy who's not done anything wrong, and has said he wants to be part of the team. He's doing everything you ask him to do. He's on certain nights like Wednesday, other games, taking is whether taking or finds himself in a very reduced role offensively, all of that stuff. And
he had a usage in the loss to the Spurs of 5.8.
He's usually around like a 13, correct? 13, 14, somewhere in that neighborhood,
give or take. Sure.
And so, I think there is some of that. Like, you don't want to feel like you are penalizing somebody who isn't doing anything wrong. He's going into a contract year. And while the Lakers, I think, want to keep him, it always gets touchy with players when they're seemed to be moved to the bench as they're going to try to get paid by someone. So I think the Lakers, to some degree, are trying to kind of do right by him, and JJ's trying to do right by him. He's a really popular player and all that. That to me is the easiest one of, like, you need better defense. You need a better defensive structure and a better sort of a defensive culture. And Smart does that better than anybody on the team, while not totally crushing the offensive slot that he's in. He's not a good shooter, Wednesday night notwithstanding. That's, part of the reason he was able to shoot as much as he was, because the Spurs happily left him open for most of the game, even when he was hitting shots, which is not something teams do to Rui, which is part of his value. But
except for the fact that he doesn't get the ball.
Well, no, but like that's the space. Like, they ignore Jarred Vanderbilt, for example, and they don't ignore Rui, and that keeps the spacing theoretically what it should be. I would swap those two guys out. To me, that is first and foremost, unless you think Smart just can't do it. That to me is the easiest step one. Let's try this, assuming you can work over again the sort of small p politics of it all.
I mean, I'll address a few parts of this. I don't see why Marcus Smart can't start. You can make his minutes work for whatever you want. There are guys in this league who've been starters who play 12 minutes a night. That wouldn't be the case for Marcus, sure. But you can make this work. As far as
the basketball aspect of it is not a problem. It is
right.
It's the guy going into a contract year, politics of,
okay.
Yeah, we just spent like 2 days ago, everybody was up in arms because Rich Paul said, that Reeves should come off the bench. And that changes sort of in the minds of some people, the perception of him. Reeves is also averaging 20 something points a game and is going to get paid no matter what. Rui is not in that boat.
This is a communication thing between JJ and Rui, Rob Pelinka and Rui. We value you as part of this team. We consider you part of our future. We hope you are going to be our future. This is a skill set thing. Mm-hmm. And, the question of Austin moving to the bench, remove the politics of it. When you're talking about the defensive issues, it doesn't actually solve the problem. If you swap in Marcus for Austin, you're still left with Rui guarding out of position, which is one of the problems of this team.
It helps a little bit, but it doesn't help.
Not a lot. It actually doesn't.
And Reeves is going to play 35 minutes a night, whether he starts or comes off the bench.
But also, I'm just saying, like the things that we are talking about in the starting unit, trying to get your team off to the best start on both ends of the floor. This part of the problem is Rui is continually guarding out of position.
No question,
because there's nobody else to do this. If you start Marcus ahead of Austin, it might placate some people who want to see Austin come off the bench, but it doesn't actually address this issue. But as far as the politics go, you need to explain this to Rui. I mean, to be totally honest, if you value Rui as part of the future, I would actually look to give him an extension now while he's extension eligible.
Right. You can tell him as much as you want, like, we value you. This isn't going to affect how we want to, how much we would want to pay you. But plans change. And if he finds himself on the open market and the promises that the Lakers made to pay him like a fifth starter, so to speak, or a fringy starter, go out the window.
I've been a very big proponent of Rui. I think the everydayers know this. I also don't think that you can keep your team at a position of weakness when you've been trying to establish yourself as, at minimum, a 4 seed, because you're worried about the feelings of a fifth starter, particularly a fifth starter that, quite frankly, you're not utilizing enough anyway. Like,
I agree.
If for politics, basketball, combination of both, whatever, if you're going to insist on keeping Rui in the starting lineup, you need to actually maximize him. The Lakers are 24th in the league for 3-point attempts. They're 17th for percentage. Rui is their best 3-point shooter by a mile. He is 5th on the team for attempts per game, 6th by 36 per 36 minutes, taking out the guys who aren't in the rotation. So he actually goes down per 36 minutes. Side note, Luka is currently leading the league with 10.6 threes per game. Granted, it is steadily going down. It needs to keep going down because you can't take that many when you're shooting just under 34%. But they need to, if they're going to insist on keeping Rui in the starting lineup, they need to actually utilize his skill set, because right now he's kind of a floor spacing non-shooter. And if that doesn't sound like an actual thing, it's because it's not. If you want to say his gravity provides something,
that's what I think they're trying to maximize.
But they've got 4 guys out there with gravity anyway. There's only so far Rui's gravity goes from theoretical to actual thing. If he's taking 4 threes a game, 5 on a good night, there's only so much the gravity actually matters.
Don't you think too, some of this would be solved by just play faster, move the ball, get up the floor, and do things faster? I feel like,
of course,
yeah. I mean, you can get Rui more shots by running more of your offense that allows eventually that penetration that usually results in Rui cutting or being available in a spot up and all that stuff. I feel like half the time they just run out of time to give somebody like Rui a good shot.
It would be helpful, but there are times when they move the ball around and it moves a lot between Luka, Austin, and LeBron. I mean, there's an element of you need to be looking to do this, like actively looking to do this. Like the Lakers are not so unique that, or shouldn't be so unique that other guys around the league who aren't even as good of a three-point shooter as Rui get more shots. Some of this is they don't look to do it.
Can you use Rui in a, like frankly how JJ was often used when he was a player, where he's constantly running off screens? I don't know if like they're terribly creative with how they think about maximizing Rui, but I also would have to, full disclosure, probably do more investigating into what exactly could they be doing with Rui inside his skill set.
Or take a look.
It doesn't seem terribly creative, but I don't know.
Well, I mean, I have no idea. We'd have to go through like Synergy and stuff like that. Take a look at some of the clips where Rui has been running off screens. Like they don't do that for Rui a whole lot.
Much, right.
That being said, if his screen navigation offensively is at the level of his screen navigation defensively, I'm not looking to go there.
It's gonna be like the video game where your character gets stuck in the corner and just sort of trying to walk and it can't.
But I just feel like there's an element of bleep or get off the pot with the way they use Rui, like whether as a starter or we both think he should be moved to the bench where he'd actually get more shots, the amount that he's actually involved in the offense.
I think there's some, like, again, the sort of team culture issues. I think there's some of it I still think maybe related to Smart and what they feel he can do and how much he can handle. And he has been in the lineup a lot. There's been, has been missing too much. And then I think, it's just this idea too of what Rui does for the offense, even if he's not shooting. The other half of this, of course, Andy, is Jarred Vanderbilt. And he is a player who also garners a lot of conversation and attention for somebody who probably at maximum will be playing 15 minutes a night. So we'll talk about that next.
Locked On Lakers is brought to you by Quo. New year, new systems. This is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of running a business, think there's got to be a better way, because there is. Quo, Q-U-O, the smarter way to run your business systems. If you are ready to make your workday smoother, keep customers connected without the headaches, Quo makes upgrading your setup easier than ever. Having calls, texts, and voicemails in one clean view keeps everything organized, helps you stay responsive. Being able to share one team number makes it so much easier to make sure nothing gets missed. Make this the year where no opportunity, no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/LockedOnNBA. That's QUO.com/LockedOnNBA. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers.
Locked On Lakers is also brought to you by FanDuel. NFL Sundays, they move real fast, Andy. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. And that's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. And with FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, defense tightens up, or momentum flips on a turnover. People love, I know, fourth quarter bets, see as the game tightens up and you want to see, like, how's my quarterback going to do? Can I get, one big play from my running back? Whatever it might be, live spreads, money lines, they adjust instantly on FanDuel, so you can jump in on any moment. Player props update as players heat up. You can bet on the next touchdown, scores, live drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, drive, and possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action of the season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Want to let people know as well about the Everydayer Club. We certainly thank you for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, and for making the Locked On Network the #1 sports podcast network anywhere. You already live your team every day with us, and now take it up a level and go ad free We do hear your questions and comments about these things. Join the Everydayer Club and get Locked On Lakers with 0 interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. So go to lockedonlakers.supercast.com. Again, lockedonlakers.supercast.com, or check the link in the show notes to learn more. One of the things that makes, like you said, Andy, in the last segment, the Rui Smart thing kind of seemed like an easy thing to try, is because you're talking about guys whose minutes probably wouldn't change that much anyway.
Nope.
Rui is going to play, some nights over 30, but, many nights in the 20s. Marcus Smart's going to play somewhere in the 20s, occasionally more than 30, but that's not a major adjustment. You take Austin Reeves and put him on the bench, unless you just do it for organizing your rotation differently. There is no world in which you reduce Austin Reeves to a 25-minute-a-night player. It is not going to happen, nor should it. He's your third best player, if you're, depending on how you feel about where LeBron is right now. Vando is a fascinating thing. You made a comparison yesterday. You started, and I don't remember the exact context if it was Vanderbilt specifically, but the sort of the backup quarterback phenomenon. Bring up what you mean by that, because it was along the lines of something that I think is very true about Jarred Vanderbilt, but remind folks in case I didn't hear it.
We see a lot of fans, whether in the comments section for YouTube or people hitting us up on Twitter at Can Brothers, say nothing of, I've brought this up before. I've seen other people who cover the team bring this up before, wanting to see JJ play Jarred Vanderbilt more often, or at least give Vando more of a try, less of a short leash when he is on the court. I think I would not be surprised, if nothing else, I would say, if Vando is on the court hyper aware of, if I make one mistake, I'm going to get yanked, as opposed to some other guys with longer leashes, and that can affect the way you actually play. We've also seen evidence over the years of Vando's shortcomings, specifically offensively, where he just has had difficulty landing on any consistent utility.
He's kind of bad at everything.
I think he's a decent ball mover, but other than that, he's not been particularly consistent at anything, consistently successful at anything. The finishing is the area that I think really creates the problems. For all the focus on make Jarred Vanderbilt a corner 3 shooter happen this year, really the problem is the finishing.
Even his offensive rebounding, Andy, which, can sometimes, the energy and the willingness to try to go after that offensive rebound, if every time he gets it, he either can't convert the rebound or has to kick it out somewhere, it mitigates the value of what he's doing.
To some degree, it does. I don't think it is without any value, but it doesn't
mitigate. It doesn't eliminate.
Right. It doesn't make it as valuable as it could be. But there's also, in football, you will often see fans clamoring for the backup quarterback on a team that's struggling. In part, sometimes it's because the backup quarterback is an unknown commodity. He can be a rookie, someone that you're just imagining what they're like in your head. But also, too, if there is a struggle of any kind, the guy that isn't playing becomes in your mind the potential solution. Mm-hmm. And while we've seen plenty of evidence of what Vando can't do, the things that he can do are some of the areas where the Lakers are most lacking. And it does, like I said earlier in the show, get perplexing why JJ seems to be going so far out of his way not to play the guy any minutes, who does address, not solve, but address some of the more glaring issues on this team that very few players on the team are actually equipped to address.
The backup quarterback comparison to me is a good one. Like, sometimes you end up in a situation where, you put that backup in, it's like, oh my God, what were we thinking not putting this guy in originally? Most of the time, you are reminded, if not relatively quickly, certainly over time, why the guy was a backup.
Sure.
And I think Vanderbilt is, before we even get to the parts that I think, like, I do agree with you and where I think you could tweak the rotation to find minutes for him and whose minutes would get lost. Vanderbilt is appealing also too, because the things that he does do are really appealing to fans. He tries really hard. He, gives a lot of energy. And I'm not trying to discount the value of these things, but like when you watch a game and you're frustrated by your team, the guy who looks like he's working really, really, really hard is going to be your favorite and the one you want to put in. He has a reputation, at least, of better defense than some of the players that are playing instead of him. I think the reputation exceeds the reality in certain aspects. I think he is a more challenging defender to integrate into a defense than, say, Smart, who is just a better overall team defender and does more things well and all that. There are certain things Vando's actually not that great at defensively, and certain things he is good at.
Oh, he fits right in.
Yeah. I mean, I think like they're trying, I think JJ's hoping they can get a more complete version of that with Thero over time. Like he's better at, maybe he can be better at more things for a guy who's probably not going to contribute that much offensively. So I think, and the list of coaches that have not been able to figure out how to make Jarred Vanderbilt work is getting pretty long. There a lot of coaches seem to try it and over time go away from it. And so JJ's not alone in that regard. I do think, though,
I'm not sure I totally agree with that, but continue.
Sure. I do think, though, that there is an easy substitute here, and a lot of Vanderbilt's minutes you could give to Gabe Vincent, or from Gabe Vincent, because Vincent's supposed to be giving you a little bit of outside shooting, never shoots the ball. He's supposed to be providing you some defensive integrity in the backcourt, which the Lakers obviously need, but his size issues relatively consistently get exacerbated. And when you're not going to take Reeves off the floor, putting him next to somebody who has, similar problems, can be difficult. I might see what happens. What happens if I can at least put a larger active defender on the floor, and see what happens there. That's where I would try to find Vando minutes.
If nothing else, it just gets frustrating, not just when you see the areas where Vando could theoretically help, but you also hear JJ talk about the areas where they're lacking. It's like, bro, like when you are...
He clearly doesn't think he's as good as those things as others people do.
Right, but Vando is, by any realistic measure, better at those things than most of the guys on the team, even if you don't think Vando is as good as his biggest proponents would say that he is. He's better at those things than a lot of other guys on the team. And there comes a point where it's like, look, you can only lament the absence of these qualities for so long while not playing a guy that is at least one of your better players at addressing those absences before, again, it just starts looking like you are going out of your way not to address it using one specific player.
I just don't think he thinks Vanderbilt's very good. Like, I mean, I don't think he's like, I don't think it's like, I'm not going to play that guy. I'm not going to, I just don't, I think.
But he's playing other guys that I think you could also make an argument aren't that good either.
I already mentioned one that I might try a swap, and I don't know if it would work. I don't know if it would make a difference.
It's more than
for the most part. I just know for the most part, by not playing Gabe Vincent is not going to create, I think, a major sense of loss, because Vincent hasn't been that great. And so
but that's a guy that JJ clearly thinks
has a lot of trust in. There's no question. Has a lot of trust in, and there are probably
he's JJ's Cam Reddish.
He is a little bit there. His Torian Prince. Like every coach has players.
Yes,
that
Torian's a better comp.
They do, and believe that whether justified or not. Often things are justified in ways that we don't see. There are 10 different things going on in the sequence of a play where, maybe Gabe Vincent does X, Y, and Z poorly, but he unlocks these 3 things, what they're trying to do offensively, because in the sequence of stuff they're trying to do, he sets a better screen. He is in the right spot more often. All these things that are not always plainly obvious, even to people like us who watch a lot. So I do give coaches a lot of deference on these things.
He clearly knows more than we do, but that being said,
I ultimately, he clearly does not think Vanderbilt is that good, and that the trade-offs for giving him those minutes are worse than the boost you might get in areas of need.
And that is where I would say, and I said this in reaction to the Spurs loss for Thursday's show, I think those deficiencies are magnified in JJ's head more than what I see on the court, but also, frankly, the numbers bear out. The numbers do not bear out this being as big of a problem as JJ seems to think it is.
They're going to have to try something because, even the deadline, we'll get into a little bit more next week about, what the Lakers might be able to do to try to address some of these deficiencies. They are limited. Like, what if Giannis becomes available between now and the trade deadline? Can the Lakers make an offer that would be tempting to Milwaukee? The answer is no, not really. That kind of thing will have to wait until the off season more than likely. And even then, the Lakers probably still couldn't make an offer that would be as good as anything Houston,
not
San
unless
Antonio.
Austin Reeves says, I have been dying my whole career to be a Milwaukee Buck.
And who doesn't say that? A Milwaukee Buck on a team without Giannis. Like, that's what I want.
For my prime.
It doesn't seem likely. So we'll talk about these things and like where the Lakers can go and what they might be able to do in the next week. The Lakers do play on Sunday, but then it is a quiet stretch of the schedule while the NBA finishes up the Cup. Lakers, the upside of losing is they will get a little more rest, and so we'll see how that goes. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out with over 37,000 subscribers to the channel. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of every day. We will see you on Monday.